be diving into the B&P tunnels, heading for Washington. So here comes Amtrak 182 for New York, arriving Baltimore. Today we're going to rail fan the Northeast Corridor between Baltimore and Washington. Go to a few locations along the way, visit a few MARC stations, and hopefully get some action at Union Station from the nearby metro stop just north of the platforms. Over there on track 4 is the MARC train I'm going to be taking from here to Bwi Rail Station. Got an MP36 in the back and a brace of Sumitomo cars. These cars toiled on the Long Island Railroad several summers ago. Okay, coming in now at 10:05 is Amtrak train 79, the Carolinian, en route from New York to Charlotte, North Carolina. Highball. I love the sound of those things when they start up. Very high-tech sounds. AEM 7s were kind of blah. Even the GG1s didn't really make much noise. Just the hum of the traction motors when they accelerated. Looking at the exterior of Baltimore Penn Station, which is getting quite a makeover. It's being renovated. The station was built in 1911. The inside is much more inspiring than the outside at the moment. This station isn't quite as huge and grandiose as, say, 30th Street or Union Station, Washington, but it has its own intimate charm. It's definitely one of the busier stations on Amtrak's system. There's proof positive there. That's just a small sampling of the trains that stop here. Train information. Waiting area. I'm going to take MARC 427 to BWI. Start rail fanning along the line. Okay, just arrived BWI Rail Station on train 427. Push-pull set of Sumitomo cars. South Shore has cars that look something like this. MARC has evolved from just a rush hour only service on 3 different lines. The Brunswick line on the B&O, the Camden line to Baltimore on the B&O, and to Baltimore on the Pennsy. Now it's evolved to off-hour service on the Penn line, this Northeast Corridor route. The rest of them are rush hour only still, but the service has increased. Here comes train 418 MARC from Washington to Baltimore with a MP36. I've seen enough of them in the last couple of weeks. next stop at Odenton. I think those are awesome engines, and I'll be seeing a lot of them on this trip on 2 different commuter railroads. Okay, today we're exploring the old Baltimore and Potomac Railroad, B&P, later the Philadelphia, Baltimore and Washington Railroad, then the Pennsylvania Railroad, evolving to today's Amtrak Northeast Corridor. This is the Bwi Rail Station, serves nearby Thurgood Marshall International Airport, formerly called Friendship Airport. It's had a lot of names in its existence. Bwi Station, or Bwi Thurgood Marshall Rail Station, is a joint Amtrak MARC facility, and it's evolved to be quite a modern, adequate structure, far from the Spartan structure I recall when it opened in the early 1980s. My first exposure to this train station, back then it was just simply called Bwi Rail Station, and that's what the airport was called, one of its many names. I worked for a no-frills carrier that was formed out of deregulation called Capital Air. They had a small domestic and international network. They served Puerto Rico, Los Angeles, and a few European cities. And one of the perks working for that company was getting a free World Airways ticket. The problem with that is that flight only flew out of BWI. So I had to take a train down here from New York, and then I whisked the shuttle bus over to BWI, and I flew to London Gatwick Airport. My first of many visits to London, and I hope there are many more. Yeah, that trip I took was back in 1982. Both Capital Air and World Airways are extinct today. 11:08, here comes Amtrak 185 en route from New York to Norfolk, Virginia. Just sitting there like that, they sound like kittens. They don't have a lot of power, but they have plenty of it. 8,600 horsepower. It purrs like a kitten, like a lion when it starts up, actually. And hello to you too, Mr. Engineer. Hopefully on the way down at some of these MARC-only stations, I can get some horn shows from these guys. 11:28, approaching is a Acela Express train 2151 en route from Boston to Washington. We'll be making a stop here. Enjoy these while you can. Starting in 2023, after a delay, the new duck cellars will be put into service. Those are the Acela 2s I'm talking about. I call them duck cellars because of the way the nose looks on the cars. The snout on the nose of those power cars look like duck's bills. They're not very attractive, but I guess you have to do it if you want to have high speed. It's all about aerodynamics. Well, those cars have been around, those train sets, I should say, have been around for 20 years. They've proven to be very reliable and they make money for Amtrak. I never really cared much for these computerized public address systems. They're not sophisticated enough. For Amtrak 84, which is due soon en route from Norfolk to New York, he makes a few extra stops like Aberdeen, Newark, Delaware, but the public address announcement calls it Newark. They're just too stupid, those things. They're as bad as New Jersey Transit on Montclair trains. Sounding like he's choking to death going, train to Montclair. The human touch is better. Well, at 11:53, running late is Amtrak 84 en route from Norfolk, Virginia to New York. He's arriving ahead of MARC 418 en route from Washington to Baltimore. Must have leapfrogged around him someplace. Probably passed him up at Grove, south of, I think it's around Odenton. Well, here comes MARC 429 from Baltimore to Washington. Okay, highball. Next stop, Baltimore Penn. MARC 418 from Washington to Baltimore should be right behind him. 1201 approaching is MARC 418 from Washington to Baltimore, powered by an MP36PH-3C. With this wonderful AC electrification, you wonder why they don't have electric locomotives on these trains. Awesome looking locomotives. Virginia Railway Express entire fleet is comprised of these. Some Bombardier double-deckers in there, just like EXO of Montreal and New Jersey Transit. 1219 is 2164, Washington, Boston. And shortly we should have 2153 en route from Boston to Washington going through. Here comes 2153 at 1227, Boston to Washington. Hurricane. Well, here comes MARC 520 from Washington to Perryville at 1245 with a charger. Chargers are becoming very popular in the United States. Amtrak has them, Coaster has them. Before you know it, the Metro North and Long Island Railroad will get them. MARC has a varied motor power fleet. They have the MP36s, a lot of them, the Chargers. They have a couple of GP39s, and I think they still run the HHP8s. We shall see later. The Maryland flag is wild. Reminds me of the Indianapolis 500. Yeah, this train makes a round trip to Perryville. He'll come back as train 337. He'll get back into Washington, D.C. at 3:48 p.m. I forget who makes those double-deckers. All I know is VRE had them for a little while. They got rid of them to MARC. I prefer the Nippon Chariot gallery cars, Chicago style, personally. Have a good one. We rode MARC 431 from BWI here to Odenton. And they move right along between stations, 3-digit speeds. And at the Odenton MARC station, we have a Pennsylvania Railroad reminder with this Keystone sign. And right here at Odenton Station is the Odenton Heritage Society Museum. I believe this building was built in 1912. I remember years ago, back in Penn Central days, they had a couple of Baltimore-Washington commuter trains, ran with MP54s. It's gotten a lot better since then. Here comes 141, Springfield to Washington. By Odenton, 113. This is a nice station, plays music, cheerful place. Nice area. This is MARC's bread and butter line, the Penn line between Washington and Baltimore Penn Station and Perryville. Runs off-peak hours, heavy-duty rush hour service. The Brunswick line operates trains on the old B&O to Brunswick, Maryland and Frederick, Maryland, and there's some service that goes beyond to Martinsburg, West Virginia, that West Virginia pays for beyond the Maryland border. And there's the competing to the Penn line, the Camden line, the B&O line from Washington to Baltimore Camden Station. It's a shorter distance, about 37 odd miles, whereas the Penn line to Baltimore is about 40. Well, here comes MARC train 423 from Washington to Baltimore at 1:39. He's got a Siemens Charger on the point. things are kind of quiet when they start up. Take a listen. Don't get to see these locomotives too much, but Amtrak's getting a bunch of them. They've got a bunch of them out in the Midwest. Mixture of Sumitomo and Bombardier cars. .144, that was 95 en route from Boston to Norfolk, Virginia. Should have 2155 blasting through from Boston to Washington shortly. Acela. 2155. By at 145. Temperature's 82, but it feels like 182. Humidity is definitely quite prevalent today. I got a bottle of water and relying on these waiting sheds to keep cool. Right away at 146 is 184, Washington to Boston. Right around the curve a little ways to the north is Grove Interlocking. All right, we went to the next stop at Bowie State University. Got off train 433. Those are built by Motive Power Industries, those MP36s, but they got every bit of those EMD prime movers. To the out-of-town uninitiated, this is pronounced Bowie, not Bowie, as in David Bowie. If you come around here and call it Bowie, they're gonna know you're from out of town. So I try to pronounce them correctly if I can. Bowie State University. This station is relatively new. It replaced the original Bowie station, which was further down. Today, there's a park site there. It's where the Pope's Creek Secondary diverges off the corridor. And the old Bowie Tower is located at that same park where the old station used to be. Here comes the Silver Star to Florida, 222. That train was loaded with Viewliners. That's got to be one of the most stupid trains on Amtrak. It runs from New York to Tampa, then it backtracks, and then it goes down the old Seaboard, Maine to Miami. For some stupid reason, it did away with the Silver Meteor, which is a more direct train and faster train to Miami. Instead, they have this slow boat to China going to Florida. Well, here comes 174 at 2:34, Newport News to Boston. He's over 4 hours late. Amtrak serves a lot of places in Virginia lately. He was in good shape out of Newport News, but something happened on CSX between there and Williamsburg. Here comes the Crescent, number 20, New Orleans to New York at 2:42. Should have 125 shortly from New York to Newport News. More Virginia service. There's 125 at 2:45. Gotta be alert for Washington-bound trains here. It's a sort of a blind curve to the north. Seabrook is a much better place. It's straight both directions. All right, at 2:50, here comes MARC 424 en route from Washington to Baltimore. And we rode to the next stop of Seabrook, Maryland. Got off train 4:35. Gonna hang here for a while, get some of the rush hour trains. Sounds like my cat. Got a charger on the back of this. Heading to his next stop at New Carrollton. Seabrook is just on the outside of the Capital Beltway. Well, here comes 148 from Washington to Springfield, Massachusetts, 3:19. Ooh, he was carrying some excess baggage, a P-42, number 89. Plenty of straight track going north. That goes straight up to the community of Bowie. You can see them coming for a long time coming south. Years ago, there used to be a railroad crossing here. Here comes 537, Perryville to Washington Express. MARC at 3:35. .338 Washington bound. There's no scheduled train through here. This has to be some kind of a deadhead. Charging. Yeah, those cab cars on MARC, like New Jersey Transit and SEPTA, have K5 LA horns. Other commuter railroads like Metro, they have K3 LAs. I don't know what MBTA has, but they're kind of nice sounding three-chimers. Metro North, Long Island Railroad, I'm not even going to discuss because I might regurgitate. But the Virginia Railway Express cab cars have a most unusual horn, a Nathan C5A UWP. Very original. I'll hear that tomorrow. Okay, 3:45, we're going to get jammed by 2159 from Boston to Washington. Around here for 5 seconds. We're going to have a few eastbounds or northbounds coming at 4:12. Here comes 2172, the Acela, Washington, Boston. And shortly thereafter should be 178 from Washington to Boston. Well, next up at 4:19 is 178 from Washington to Boston. Regional train. All right, next up after him will be MARC 532, a Washington Perryville Express. Well, coming in from Baltimore at 4:23, train 439 from Baltimore to Washington, local. And this train blanked out, train 532 from MARC, bound for Perryville. He had a charger. those things really thunder. Well, approaching at 4:30 is Amtrak 171, Boston to Washington. It's taking it easy, chasing MARC. Might get blanked out again. This is a Perryville MARC Express. Not doing too good with the MARC Expresses here. Oh, here comes MARC 428 bound for Baltimore. He'll stop here. 437. No rest for the weary. 442 is train 2121, a Cell Express from New York to Washington. Coming fast on 3. Now just imagine how watching one of those go by at the Edgewood MARC station with the low platform. Not sure what train that was. That was MARC 634, a limited stop train to Baltimore. Approaching as a Washington-bound MARC equipment move. Going into Washington Union Station to pick up another load. Okay, at 5:02, here comes the 92, the Silver Star, Miami, Tampa to New York. Man, did you ever see so many Viewliners on one train? Yeah, you could call that the Stupid Star. Runs from Miami via Tampa, a side track, to New York. I probably wouldn't whine about it so much if the Silver Meteor was still running, but just having this go to Florida is cheapening the New York-Florida market deeply. 509, here comes the seller 2122, Washington to New York. They're awesome to watch. We'll hang out at Seabrook a little while longer. Here comes Amtrak 93 at 517, Boston to Norfolk. Not too far behind should be Amtrak 20, the Crescent from New York to New Orleans. Well, that was Amtrak 80, the Carolinian, from Charlotte, North Carolina to New York. Oh, at 523, we're in for a real treat here. A CSX freight. Looks like a coal train. Could he be headed for the Pope's Creek Secondary up at Bowie? That look like dirt, ballast, pulled by an AC 4400 CW and an ES 40 DC, actually an ES 44 AC. I didn't expect to see that during a rush hour. Well, approaching now at 5:30 is MARC train 536, an express for Perryville. My MARC train to DC is late. Okay, leaving Seabrook on train 443 for DC. We'll record the ride in. Should pass a couple of MARC trains and Amtrak 196. That was Amtrak 196 from Washington to New York. We should be passing MARC 438 and 440 to Baltimore. serving New Carrollton Station. Is 438 to Baltimore.
Carrollton, ladies and gentlemen, watch the step. Thank you for choosing MARC Penn line. Enjoy the rest of your evening. All doors open on the left-hand side.
Incidentally, the crews on the MARC trains are employed by Amtrak. There's our engineer wearing the red Orioles baseball cap.
Washington, D.C. Union Station coming up next. 10 minutes to be the final stop.
It's obvious who he roots for. Incidentally, there's no Washington Orange Line metro service through here due to construction. You can see the maintenance they're doing on the metro. An HHP8. That was train 440 to Baltimore. I believe that interlocking back there was Landover. And those two tracks veering off, they head down towards Washington, D.C., Virginia Avenue interlocking, and on over the Potomac River into Virginia. That's the route that that freight train took, we saw. was the orange line, and that was the old freight main into Potomac Yard at one time. Potomac Yard was a huge freight yard that served the Pennsy, the B&O, the C&O, the Southern, and the RF&P. We're still in Maryland. We'll be crossing the Anacostia River and we'll be into DC at that point. And there's the spotlessly clean Anacostia River. We're now in the District of Columbia. And up here we're going to join up with the B&O Camden line from Baltimore and pass Ivy City Yard. There it is. That's used by MARC's Camden line trains. There it is, Ivy City. That building back there is one of the 3 Acela Express shops. The other is in Sunnyside and the other one is in Boston. Over there is CSX's main line, swinging up towards Silver Spring and points beyond. The Metropolitan Sub. And there are some Virginia Railway Express gallery cars. Back on the left, we're about to enter Washington Terminal jurisdiction. Passed under New York Avenue, US Highway 50. And we've entered Washington Terminal. Here's an old arena. The Beatles performed here in the 60s. It's not an arena anymore. Old K Tower. And there's the rear of a Virginia Railway Express train there. I think he's headed for Fredericksburg. This thing is really rocking and rolling. We are in Washington, D.C., Union Station.
Washington, D.C., Union Station. Now ride in, watch your step. Small gap between the train station platform, making to the MARC Penn line. Enjoy the rest of the day.
And like Metro, they have Mars lights on these cars. Well, the time is 6:12 p.m. Rail fanning is frowned upon at Washington Union Station, so I'm doing the next best thing. I'm hanging out at this red line station, one stop north of Union Station, Noma Gallaudet University, which is at the northern throat of Union Station, and everything going in and out of here passes by this spot. We'll hang out here for a while and see a few more MARC departures on all three lines, the Penn line, the Camden line, and the Brunswick line. This Glenmont-bound red line train is made up of early 2000 built breeder cars. The signals on the signal bridge over the trackside of Union Station. They're B&O style CPLs. They're all over the place. Man, this looks like some MARC equipment coming into Union Station. There's 881 from Martinsburg, West Virginia is departing, due out of here at 6:20. That's MARC train 881 bound for distant Martinsburg, West Virginia. Serves the famous Civil War town of Harper's Ferry, where John Brown was cornered and killed. That train is arriving from Baltimore Penn with an AMC Charger. Those double-deckers you saw and you've seen throughout the day are built by Kawasaki in the late 90s, early 2000s. And coming out of Ivy City is a Virginia Railway Express set of equipment with MP36PH-3C. This may be for a Spotsylvania train. Departs Washington Union Station at 6:50 p.m. for Fredericksburg and Spotsylvania. Now we got a Perryville bound MARC train coming up alongside behind this metro train. Well, we saw one HHP-8, but that was it. He's headed for Perryville on the Penn line. That's the equipment for Virginia Railway Express 315, bound for Fredericksburg and Spotsylvania. Okay, coming out of Union Station at 6:42 is MARC train 895, bound for Frederick, Maryland. He goes up the Brunswick line as far as Point of Rocks, turns east on the Y, and then northeast towards Frederick. At 6:57, here comes MARC train 858 en route to Camden Station in Baltimore, using the old B&O line. He'll be paralleling the Penn line until he gets past Ivy City. Then those two lines will go their separate ways. Well, arriving at 7 p.m., passing by here, is Amtrak train 85 en route from Boston to Richmond, Virginia. It's about 25 minutes late. Like so many trains in Washington Union Station, he'll swap engines for a diesel. There's train 2126 bound for New York, departed Washington at 7. Well, we had an exciting but rather hot day, rail fanning Amtrak and MARC between Baltimore and Washington. Enjoyed it immensely. Amtrak I've seen, of course, but MARC as an operation I very rarely have seen. So it was a pleasure to have observed it today. It's been an exciting railfan day, and it's neat to be able to end it at this tabernacle of railroading, Washington Union Station.